When I was a sportscaster in a radio station in Manchester, New Hampshire, I went down to spring training for the first time ever, scared to death. And Yaz was one of the first guys that I'd interviewed. I had no idea what to ask him. Are you kidding me? Think about this. You're doing something that was not your chosen profession. You're a fish out of water. You're all of a sudden from a great high school sports town in Manchester, New Hampshire, and you're going down to spring training and talking to Karl Yastrzemski. I mean, you have no business being there, and so it was terrifying to me. And of course, I am sure I asked him some stupid question, and I know he did. I don't know what it was, but I'm embarrassed that I even had to do that. But you know what? I always got along with him. One of the great quotes that he had for me, he said he hated Ted Williams. I don't know, we asked him about Ted, he says, I hate Ted Williams. So, I get along with him. I said, but he ruined it for me. He said, I couldn't play left field. I couldn't hit the way he hit. He just was impossible to live up to. And of course, Yaz was the guy that came in after Ted. He was the heir apparent. And of course, Triple Crown, 67, Impossible Dream. He did so many great things, including when he retired, walking around to the fans. One of the most emotional things I've ever experienced. But you know what? Another great moment is he covered up home plate with dirt when he did agree with an umpire's call. He reached down and, you know what, he did things that said, yes, that's great. He did things, he covered home plate with dirt in front of the umpire. Of course he got thrown out, but it was a great gesture. He didn't sit there and swear at him, he just covered up home plate with dirt. He just did things like that just endeared me to him. And Jess Kane did the great song, Man They Call Yaz.
Karl Yastrzemski, Karl Yastrzemski, Karl Yastrzemski, the man they call Yaz. Karl Yastrzemski, Karl Yastrzemski, he's the idol of Boston, Mass.
He was one of a kind. And we were talking about Ted Williams and Karl Yastrzemski and left fielders for the Red Sox, and then Jim Rice came along, and left field was obviously a charmed position because everybody seemed to go to the Hall of Fame that played there, including Rice. And of course, I did more interviews with the back of Jim Rice's head over the years than anybody else. He was not user-friendly. It was not like Nomar, when Nomar put a piece of tape and said, press can't cross this line. But Jim had his moments, and he didn't like the press. I don't blame him. But Rice, I remember asking him a question in spring training, and he answered it very honestly. I said, how do you think things are going to look this year? Something like that. And he said, not good. We're not, we haven't done much in the off season, and it doesn't look like we're ready to compete. Something along that line, okay? Something that would have made the front office unhappy. But he was honest about it. Can't fault him for doing that. Just answering a question honestly. Basically said, we suck. And nobody wants to hear that, especially if you're in the front office. And then the Red Sox had a newspaper publication. And part of the article in the publication was Rice says Red Sox are not ready to compete, something like that. And then Rice denied it. He said he never said it. I said, well, I have the tape. What do you want me to do with the tape? You want to see the tape? Then it became kind of a arguing contest. I think we got past it by playing golf. I know that really sounds stupid, but golf is the healer of all wounds. We played a couple times and found out, well, he's not such a bad guy after all. And I think he knew that I didn't do anything dishonest with him, and so that was one of those things. But we never really had a warm relationship. I'll say that. Then there was Pedro Martinez, amazing pitcher. You can't talk about Pedro Martinez without talking about his All-Star appearance in 1999 when the All-Star game was at Fenway Park. And Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa and those guys were hitting home runs, and Pedro wiped them out. First 5 guys struck out in the National League. Probably he was possessed. He was a man possessed. And great thing about Pedro, well, Pedro didn't have a lot of size to him. Another Dan Duquette player. But boy, could he pitch. He didn't have the size, but he could pitch. He had long fingers, and the long fingers enabled him to put different kinds of spin on the ball, and he was able to control it. He figured it out. And for a guy of his size, he owned those National League sluggers. And then there was the Pedro Martinez-Clemens matchup. It was thrilling. It was thrilling. Clemens had gone to the Yankees. He'd gone to Toronto, he'd gone to the Yankees. And then it was Yankees, Clemens, Pedro, Red Sox. Pedro won. I think he thought he was better than people realized. And I have to agree with him. He came in against the Cleveland Indians in the playoff game at the time it was Jacobs Field. And pitched basically a perfect game for 6 innings. In relief, and won the game. So he was clutch. Pedro was clutch, except he couldn't do it against the Yankees in 2003. The one game that Grady Little should have taken him out of and didn't. So many stories that just blend into one another. One of my, the one thing I heard about Pedro is that he was a man of his own mind. He pretty much did what he wanted to do. Nobody questioned him, and he did. He would, during a game, and I know this because one of his personal trainers told me, he would leave, during a game, he'd leave the clubhouse, walk over on Lansdowne Street, go into one of the stores or go into one of the bars during the game and just hang around. You know what? He just got out of there. He didn't want to be there. He just, during the game, get out, take off his cleats, put on his shoes or whatever, and walk out on Lansdowne Street or what is now Yawkey Way or what is now Jersey Street or whatever they're calling it. Just cruise around. I don't know what he did, but I know he did it on a regular basis. You can't fault a guy like that. Free spirit. That's Pedro. Pedro is a free spirit.